Good afternoon, Patriots. This is the American Vision, broadcast on the TLBTV network, sponsored by the Liberty Beacon Project. This is your host, Bill Muckler, the author of 2020, A Clear Vision for America, and the soon-to-be published 2020, A Clear Vision for Our Future. I'm broadcasting from my home studio here in Cocoa, Florida, on America's beautiful Space Coast. Previously, on earlier broadcasts, we talked about the budget, and we needed to get into talking about taxes. That's very topical subject right now. But we also talked about some other things that we're going to go back to today. We talked about paradigm paralysis. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about taxes. And we're going to bring in a new subject for you, Pareto's laws of mathematics. Now you're thinking, oh boy, this is getting heavy. I can't handle this. Well, yes, you can. You need to learn Pareto's law. It's very important that you know this. And I'm going to explain it to you in a very common sense way that you'll all be able to understand it, and you'll be able to talk about it, and you'll be able to use it. We all know that we suffer from paradigm paralysis on many things, but one of the worst things we suffer paradigm paralysis on is that we reject all the good common sense things that we know should be true in life, but we just can't believe because we've been programmed to think differently. Remember the story I told you about the Swiss watchmakers? They totally rejected the digital watch and the digital watch concept as a timepiece. And yet it was the Swiss themselves who invented and developed this product, the digital watch. Why couldn't they accept it? Because it didn't fit their paradigm. They could not think outside the box, so they rejected it. There are other people who have come up with good ideas that have been rejected too. I could give you thousands of examples. Let's talk about one you probably heard of. You heard of a guy by the name of Galileo. Early 1600s. Came up with a theory called heliocentricity. Oh boy, now you're thinking, where's this guy going with this? Hey, I got a real high grade in astronomy in college. That was one of my science electives, but that has nothing to do with this. Galileo said the earth revolved around the sun, helio meaning sun. And that was completely rejected by people, especially the church, because the church, it just didn't fit their paradigm. And that was heresy to them. So what did they do with Galileo, who had this great idea that the earth and the planets revolved around the sun? They put him in jail. They put him in prison. They locked him up. They completely rejected him. Hey, I'm the expert on rejection. I'm the guy who wrote a book and went to publishing companies and tried to get it published. And guess what? Every one of them rejected my book. See this? They rejected, but I have a book, right? Because I didn't give up. I didn't fall for their rejections. And I'm pointing this to you because this book's got a spine, and that's what you guys got to get as a spine. The publishing companies don't have it. The media doesn't have it. The politicians don't have it. So what do we reject in life that we really need to think about and start thinking outside the box? Well, for example, we have a tax system in America. And people are taxed upwards towards 50% of their total income. Now, some people think that's a good idea. The people who think it's a good idea are the ones who are not paying 50%. The ones that are paying, nothing, or maybe little or nothing, or hardly anything. Yeah, they think that's a great idea. So most of us pay, depending on our income, our circumstances, our deductions that we can get, somewhere around 30 to 50% of our total income goes out in taxes. So do you think that's right? Let's use an average of say 40%, just as an average. Would you like to pay 60% instead of 40%? I think the politicians would like for you to. But how about if there was a clear vision 2020 tax plan whereby you only paid 20% on a voluntary basis? Well, I know what you're saying is reject, reject, reject. We have to reject this. This doesn't fit our paradigm. We have to have our tax plan. The government has a tax plan for us. We have to use that tax plan. We have to pay into that tax plan. Well, let me tell you a little bit about this tax plan. Has it really solved any problems? Has it done any good for anybody? Our poverty level is still about the same as it was 50 years ago. That hasn't improved because we're paying more taxes. We now have more than $20 trillion in national debt, and we're collecting taxes, and people say, hey, we need more taxes to pay down this debt. But has the debt ever gone down? It's always gone up. It's increased. It's doubled over the last 8 years. So is that really working for us? And now you're going to hear a lot of things coming up about taxes. And the Congress is going to take care of taxes for us, and they're going to cut taxes, and Trump's got a great tax plan. Oh, wow, isn't that wonderful? Everybody's got a good tax plan. And then we hear the TV pundits coming up with things like it has to be neutral, right? It has to be a neutral tax plan. Well, revenue neutral, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's just another myth. It's just another way of confusing us. What we're doing is we're paying more than 100 different types of taxes to federal, state, and local entities. Now, each one of us doesn't pay the total 100 and some odd taxes, but we pay a portion of them, but eventually everybody does somehow pay them, and they all go into our cost of living. So in a sense, we're paying for everything. So should we pay for everything? Well, if you listen to the politicians and the media, they'll say the rich have to pay more. Why do the rich have to pay more? Why doesn't everybody pay the same? Why can't everybody be on equal footing on this? We're supposed to be a country where everybody is treated equally. But no, we want the rich to pay more. Okay, so then they come up with these ideas about, oh, well, 1% pay, certain percentage of the taxes, and nobody really knows all that because nobody's really researched it that well. Because I've researched all this, and it's really difficult to get the true answers to everything from the .gov sites, and I've lived on those .gov sites for the last 5 or 6 years. They don't make any sense. They don't tell you a true story. So let me tell you what the true story really is. Pareto's Law. And you can Google this, you can look it up, you can study it, but I'm going to tell you what it is, and you may have heard of this. It's the 20/80 rule. Okay, 20/20, a clear vision for America, uses the 20/80 rule, or the 80/20 rule, if you like it that way. So what does this mean? It's a mathematically proven formula that it always works. It does never not work. And what it is if you take 20% of the taxpayers, 20% of the taxpayers pay 80% of the taxes. Forget all this crap about the top 1% or the top 5%, top 10%. 20% of the taxpayers pay 80% of the taxes. It's mathematically sound. It just has to work that way because that's the mathematics of it. So what that means is 20% of the taxes are paid by 80% of the people. In other words, the 80% who pay the lower amount of taxes only pay 20% in, while the top 20% pay 80% in. So that's supposed to be a really good deal because that means we're soaking the rich and we're getting the rich to pay for the poor people. Well, wait a minute. We still have the same poverty level. How has all these taxing the rich ever helped anybody that was poor? It doesn't work that way. But there are some statistics that are interesting. For example, this top 20% of the taxpayers that pay 80% of the taxes, they get the benefits of 25%, 25 cents on the dollar. Oh, that's 25% too, isn't it? 25 cents on the dollar back in benefits. The lower 80% who pay 20% of the taxes get an average of $8.13, $8.13. That's an easy number to remember. That's my birthday, 8/13. So if I'm in the lower 80% and I'm paying 20% of the taxes, for every dollar I pay in, I get $8.13 worth of benefits. Well, is that really fair for everybody? Well, it's not fair for anybody. And it's really not fair for the people who are paying the lower, the 20%, the 80% who are paying the 20%. It's not fair to them because they're the ones who are getting screwed. And you want to know why they are? Because the money that's taken away from the top 20% is out of circulation. It's gone from the economy. It doesn't help the economy. And it goes to the government where it's wasted. People, let me tell you, the government wastes your money. They spend it on stuff they don't need to spend it on, and they waste more of it than they even imagine they can waste. So how does this help the people when we take all this money out of the economy? That takes away jobs. That causes prices to go up. That lowers their purchasing power. You have to understand this, but what I'm telling you is doesn't fit your paradigm, because your paradigm is we have to pay taxes because we've got an IRS, and we all hate the IRS, but we know we have to have the IRS. Why do we have to have the IRS? Because we've always had the IRS. Well, no, we haven't always had the IRS. That just came into effect back in 1913. So a little over 100 years ago, we ended up with the Internal Revenue Service, and we ended up with the 16th Amendment that said we're going to tax income. Well, let me tell you, folks, I want you to think about this because you're really going to have to think outside of the box to accept this. But this is the truth. This is the absolute truth. It is immoral and inhumane to have people be taxed for their time, talent, and toil who live in a country. It's immoral to tax people for their production, for their services. What we're doing is we're saying, people go to work and we're going to punish you and penalize you for working. And we're going to take away up to 50% of your money that you earned. So 50% of your toil and talent and time is all going to be taken away from you because we want to soak the rich to give away money to the poor who will vote for us. That's really what it's boiled down to. So can we break this? Can we bust this paradigm? Can we break it? I don't know. I'm imploring you, please start thinking outside the box that there's a better way. There's a different way. Let's go back to 1913. The tax was supposed to be 1% on the lowest earners and up to 7% on the highest earners. Okay, how did that work out? Well, I don't think it worked out too good because we've seen over the years how it's gone up and down. And now all the politicians argue about is, what is the right percentage? Well, the right percentage is 0%. Zero. So, you say that can't work. It can't be. And the only reason you're saying it can't be is because you can't think outside the box. You have to break your paradigm. Bust that paradigm and start thinking outside the box and think, maybe there is a better way to do this, a much better way to do it. Okay, well, some people came up with the flat tax, and they said, well, that won't work because that means everybody has to pay the same thing. Well, it's not everybody paying the same thing. It's everybody paying the same percentage. So I think the flat tax plan is a far superior plan to the plan we have now. Back in 1913, it was a 2-page return that people had to fill out. And see, this is the other thing that's immoral about it. We have to give the government all of our information. Every bit of information we have about us, we have to give the government, including how much money we have and how much money we spend. That's immoral. That's wrong. We should not have to do that. Isn't there some kind of sense of privacy, sense of decency, that we have to tell the government everything? This is not a socialist communist country. It's a republic, a representative republic. So what happens with the tax rate? We keep paying more and more, higher and higher taxes, more and more taxes. Let me give you an example. You go out and you get a cell phone. And let's say the cell phone plan is for $75 a month. But then you get the bill and it's $99.87 a month. And you say, well, I thought it was $75 a month. Well, no, we've got all these fees and taxes that go to all these places. They have such a long list, it makes your head spin trying to figure it out. So you just say, well, I guess I have to accept it. That's what it costs. Well, no, that's not what it costs. That's what the government is imposing on us. The political establishment is imposing on us the idea that we have to continue to pay more and more in taxes. Let's say you want to go on vacation. You go to buy an airline ticket, and the airline ticket is $250 to go to your destination. But all of a sudden, when you go to get your ticket, your e-ticket, and you find out, no, it's really $325. Where'd that money, what happened? Where'd that come from? Well, let me tell you where it came from. It's taxes. They added all the taxes on there. So how would you like it if you didn't have to pay all these hidden taxes? You just knew that all I had to pay for is what I want to pay for. So let's go back to the 40%. Would you rather pay 50% or 60%? Because that's what the politicians want you to pay. Some of them like you to pay 70 or 80%, I guess. But they won't come out and say that directly because they know that you're going to say, well, wait a minute, that sounds like an awful lot of money. What if I said the 2020 plan said if you just paid one tax of 20% and it was voluntary and you could keep all that additional income? For example, the average mean household income is $50,000 a year. Now it's a little bit more, a little bit less, whatever, but let's just use that as a round number so we can think clearly on this. What we end up paying out in taxes ends up, we end up with about $35,000 a year. So we earn $50,000 and the government lets us keep around $35,000. With my tax plan, the 2020 Clear tax plan, that $50,000, you don't pay any of that anymore. And all the money that's taken out for all those deductions, those payroll deductions that they take from your money, your check every week, you end up getting $65,000 a year. That's a $30,000 increase. That's almost double of what you bring home now. So what's not to like about that? Well, let me tell you what's not to like about that. It doesn't fit my paradigm. If it doesn't fit my paradigm, I can't accept it. And so I'm sticking with the IRS because I know, as crooked as they are, that's the only way it can be done. Well, did you know it costs $2.45 for every $100 the IRS collects in taxes? That's like a surcharge, paying an extra $2.45. Did you know that back in that 1913, that 2-page return you had to fill out had had 189, I forget now, it had 2 pages of instructions. Now that same 2-page short form that you fill out has 189 pages of instructions. Why is it that much? Why is the tax code that much? Why have they made 4,400, more than 4,400 changes to the tax code in the last 10 years? 4,428, I believe the number is. It's in my book. Read the book and you'll find out all these things. Did you know the tax code, you're going to love this, is 3.8 million words long? 3.8 million words. That probably doesn't mean anything to you. You can't relate to that, can you? That's an awful lot of words. Okay. Shakespeare wrote a bunch of plays, right? And we've all read some of them. We've heard about some of them. The total amount of Shakespeare's works were 900,000 words. Not 3.8 billion words, 900,000 words. Did I say 3.8 million before? I meant 3.8 billion words. 3.8 billion words. More than 80,000 pages. And a lot of those pages have references to other documents that have more pages to it that nobody can actually fathom. Let's take 2020, A Clear Vision for America. I wrote this book, 20 chapters. How many words do you think are in here? Would you believe 90,660? So let's say 90,000 words. This is 1/10 the size of Shakespeare's total works of 900,000. And yet our tax code is 3.8 billion words, more than 80,000 pages. Now, let me ask you this. How many people that work for the IRS you think have read and know and understand and memorized all 80,000 pages of that tax code? You can't even read that amount in a year's time or 2 years' time. How long would it take? You know, this is like how many times more than Shakespeare's total works, and how long would it take you to read all that and understand it? So, and Shakespeare's works was really written pretty simply when you compare it to read the tax code and find out all the legalese that the politicians and the lawyers have got in. So here we go, folks. Please, your paradigms, bust your paradigms. Don't put Galileo in prison because he came up with the right answer. Reject the IRS, reject the tax code, reject the politicians that are saying, oh, it's going to be revenue neutral, or it has to be revenue neutral. I told you about that. That's a myth. That's impossible. That doesn't mean anything. What are they talking about? It's going to be neutral. Come on. So anyway, now they're arguing about percentages. So let's bust a few more myths while we're at it. Let's talk about corporate taxes. They're arguing over what percentage corporations are supposed to pay. Does anybody know how much taxes corporations pay? Well, the answer is simple. I'm going to tell you. It's zero. It's zero. 0.00 is what corporations pay in taxes. And so why are we trying to say we have to have those evil corporations pay their fair share? They have to pay. Okay. You know what? You know why that tax code is 80,000 pages long? It's very simple. Because all the corporations have got all their lobbyists, have got all their deductions and all their pet projects in there so they can reduce their own tax obligation. You don't have that opportunity, but they do because you don't have a lobbyist. You can't afford lobbyists like the corporations can. So what happens? They pay zero. All right, you say, well, some of these corporations, they do pay some money in. Well, do you know how much money they spend on tax attorneys and tax accountants and the amount of money and time that it takes to prepare these taxes? It's astronomical. And we do that for the government voluntarily. Well, not exactly voluntarily, because if we don't do it, they're going to put us in jail, right? Or they'll fine us or they'll penalize us. They'll do something to us. Okay. Corporations, taxes, zero. Here's how it works, folks. If they do pay some taxes, it just becomes an expense line, expense line on their tax, on their cost sheet, right? Okay, and then it goes to the bottom line, and so who ends up paying for it? We pay for it in additional cost in products and services that we purchase. Corporations make stuff, or they sell stuff, they service stuff, and we have to pay for that. Well, as their costs go up because the taxes they pay are included in that, we are then paying those taxes for the corporations in part of the selling price that we pay for. I know this is hard for everybody to understand, but that's what happens. Now, there's another thing that happens too. One of the ways corporations get around this is they lay off people, or they cut wages, or they don't give increases in wages. Well, as we talked about in the budget, the government gets around a 7% increase in their budget every year. Do employees get a 7% increase in their wages every year? No, because that money is going to pay for the taxes that the corporations had to pay for, so you end up paying for it. We end up paying for it. But our paradigm says, no, that can't be true. We have to reject that. We know the corporations pay a lot of taxes. Well, they don't. So why are we arguing about this tax rate for corporations? Well, it's only a myth to get people to vote for a particular political party. Vote for me because I'm going to soak the evil corporations who are run by evil white men who have been taking advantage of everybody and the poor for centuries and centuries and millenniums, and we have to get back at them. Okay, I'm worn out on this. Let's change the subject, or let's further this subject, and let's talk about the capital gains tax. We keep arguing about capital gains tax. What should it be? 15%, 25%, 35%. The politicians want it higher and higher because it's more money that they can bring in that they can waste. Here's what it should be. It should be zero. And why should it be zero? Because it's absolutely immoral to tax citizens for investing in the economy of their own country. And that's exactly what happens with the capital gains tax. If I invest $1,000 in a stock to help that company improve, its products, its research, improve its operation, give them operating capital, I've invested in that company $1,000. So when I invest that $1,000, I'd like to think, well, maybe I can get something back on it. I'd like to get maybe 10% back or something like that. That's reasonable. But no, when I get my 10% back, it's all taxed. It's penalized. You get penalized and punished for doing that. So guess what? All this whole myth about what the capital gains tax is all bogus because it's immoral to begin with. Why are we taxing people for investing in their own economy? It makes no sense. What a horrible idea. Well, guess what? Politicians have horrible ideas because they like horrible ideas because they know that's how they can fool the people and get us to think that, hey, what we're doing is a great thing. So all this money that the politicians and the government is taking from us in taxes, where does it go? It goes to the government. What does the government make? Nothing. What does the government manufacture? Nothing. The government does nothing but take money and spend money. The money that goes into the government in taxes could be going into the economy and creating jobs and creating investment interest or dividends, I should say. So instead of having that money circulating in the economy doing good, it's gone to the government where it goes into the black hole of the IRS. Huh. That doesn't help the economy any. So you say, Bill, if you have a tax plan, what is it, and why is it so revolutionary, and why can't we accept it? Why do we reject it? Because you reject it. And let me tell you why. If you thought it was a great tax plan, you'd be buying my book and telling everybody about it, but you ain't doing that, are you? So yeah, I want to sell my books, but I really want you to talk about the tax plan. So I mentioned the flat tax as being far superior to the tax code that we have now, the 80,000 page monstrosity that we have. Okay, there's a guy, a couple of guys came up with another tax plan that a lot of people really liked. And it was Congressman John Lindner from Georgia. And I had a lot of correspondence and conversations with him back, 12, 15 years ago or whatever. And there was a radio talk show personality by the name of Neil Bortz who was very much involved and invested in the fair tax plan and wrote a book. And I read the book, and I really was into this because I thought, I just want to know everything about all these different tax plans. And the fair tax was far superior to the flat tax plan, which is far superior to the one we have now. So what should I do? Should I look at taxes and say, well, let's just go along with that? Or maybe I can create something that's even better and far superior to the fair tax plan. And that's the 2020 Clear Vision Plan. Far superior to the fair tax plan, which is far superior to the flat tax plan, which is far superior to this monstrosity that the IRS has got overlords on now. So what are we going to do? Are we going to accept my tax plan, or are we going to reject it? Well, so far we've been rejecting it. Let me give you an example, just one story. When I first published my book, there's a Facebook friend. I don't know the guy. He was just a Facebook friend, right? And he was a fair tax guy. And so he said, I'll never buy your book because I'm a fair tax person and you're not for fair tax. And I said, wait a minute. I supported several politicians, representatives, by donating money if they and who were for the fair tax plan. I read the fair tax plan. I talked to John Lindner about it. I read Neil Bortz's book about it, and I know all about the fair tax plan. And I've got one that's far superior to it. And he said, "No, you don't. It can't be far superior to it. It just can't be." And so I'm messaging this guy back and forth, and I'm getting to the point where I'm getting weary because he's telling me how incompetent I am and how terrible my tax plan is, and he's never read it, and he won't even listen to some of the basic principles behind it. So that's where I'm at right now, folks. The master of rejection. I'm so used to being rejected by everybody that, it's just second nature to me. I just, keep rejecting me, and don't think outside the box, and don't buy the book, and just keep paying up to 50% in taxes and financing the IRS and the government, and just say, oh, hey, we love you. We love paying taxes, when you really don't have to do that. So why would you rather pay 50% or 40% instead of paying 20%? So if you have an income of $50,000 a year and you pay, say 40%, that's around $20,000 in taxes, because all you think about is what they took out of your paycheck. You forget about all those things you pay, like, here in Florida, if I go to Orlando Airport, I got to pay, I don't know how many different toll booths I have to go through. And I got one of those little readers, so I don't actually have to stop and give them the money every time, but then they bill me every month, right? So all these taxes we pay, on my cell phone. I thought I had this great cell phone plan until I got the first bill. Everything that I do, I pay all these extra taxes, and I'm supposed to accept this and like this, but I don't accept it and I don't like it because that's not my paradigm. My paradigm is, why do we have to finance the waste that's involved in the federal government? We don't have to do that. Okay, let's say you go to the store, and in some states you have to pay tax on food. In some states you don't pay taxes on food. Here in Florida, we don't pay tax on food. We also don't pay personal property tax. When I lived in Missouri, we paid personal property tax. In other words, everything we owned, our cars, our furniture, our boats, if you had one, or a tractor, or whatever the heck it was you owned, you had to pay a personal property tax on, after you'd already paid taxes on the income you used to buy it. And then you paid taxes, sales taxes on purchase when you purchase it. And then you had to continue to pay taxes on it. And that happens in a lot of states. That's some of these taxes I'm talking about. So people are saying, hey, out of that state, I'm going someplace like Florida. Why do you think there's so many people in Florida? Because we don't have a state income tax like we did in Missouri, doing in Missouri and a lot of other states. I think Wisconsin is one of the highest ones. I worked in Wisconsin. I know that's where I was a pea picker. And boy, they took out a lot of state tax and federal tax money out of my meager earnings, right? So here we go, folks. We're going to spend all this money on all these taxes, and what are we going to get out of it? We're not going to get much of anything out of it. So 20% of your total wage is only 10 of that $50,000 annual income. It's called the annual mean income, or something like that. I got it all in my book. I just can't think of the exact term right now. So that would be $10,000 in taxes. Well, you say, well, how can the government get by on that? Well, if you read the 2020 Clear Vision for America, you'll find out where we can cut a lot of waste out of the budget. I mean, cut a lot of waste out of there. Why should you pay for all these government programs? 2,100 federal agencies, more than 2,100 federal agencies we're paying for. We can cut that down to less than 100. That would cut down a lot of money, right? So here's what we got to do. We got to say, okay, we're only going to pay one tax, and that's a national retail tax. In other words, we're going to pay a 20% tax on everything that we purchase. But it's not going to be on food. That's going to be exempt. And it's not going to be on rent, because a lot of people pay rent, and usually the people who get hurt the most are the ones who can't afford to buy a house in the first place, so they're paying rent. So there's no tax on rent. No tax on any kind of health care or pharmaceuticals or anything like that. So no taxes on any kind of banking or investments or anything like that, like capital gains tax. No taxes on anything like that. All that stuff is completely eliminated. No taxes on educational supplies. Okay? Are you getting the picture on this? A lot of the things that we spend the biggest amount of money on are going to be tax exempt. So all you're going to do is pay taxes on the stuff you want to buy. And if you want to buy a new car, okay, you pay tax on that. If you want to buy a used car, somebody's already paid the tax on that. You don't have to pay a tax on that. If you want to buy a used TV set, which I don't know if anybody would want to do that, but if you did, any kind of a used appliance or used anything, boat, whatever, somebody's already paid the initial tax on that. It's never taxed again. In other words, we just don't continue to keep taxing over and over again. In the same way for your house, you pay tax on your house once, and it's financed over the time period of your mortgage, and then that's it. And you don't pay real estate taxes anymore. And that's what's hurting most of the seniors like myself, is we're paying these high real estate taxes for the rest of our lives. We're paying taxes, you know, a lot of us, and not me, but a lot of people I know bought houses 30 and 40 years ago, and now they finally got their mortgage paid off after 30 years, and now they're still paying these high taxes because everything has been inflated, because the Federal Reserve inflates our money to where we're paying all this money out in taxes. So what's happened is our taxes have gone up, prices have gone up, earnings have gone down, which means purchasing power has gone down. Our standard of living, even though it is greater than it was 100 years ago and more technologically improved over the last 100 years, we still are paying way too much money to the government. So people, please break your paradigms. When I first started writing the book, I said, I said, where there is no vision, the people perish. And you think I made that up? No, I didn't make that up. That's Proverbs 29:18. Where there is no vision, the people perish. Here's what's happening in America. We don't have a vision and we're perishing. You have to have a vision, and you have to have, in your vision, you have to be able to break your paradigm. 2020 vision is my life. My life is a 2020 vision. I believe in it. It's all common sense, and my book is common sense, and it's written in a common sense way by people, and it's all written in dialogue form by characters that I've made up, who are kind of like people I've worked with and known over the years, and these are people who came up with a lot of great ideas, and I use those great ideas, put them all together in a book. And the book is all about busting your paradigms and having a vision for America, having a vision for yourself, having a vision of the future, which my new book is going to be all about. And it's going to be about the Constitution, and it's going to, the way I've written this, you've never read the Constitution like this before. My book will have the entire Constitution in it, but it'll have it in such a way that it's discussed in common, ordinary dialogue by people who are just talking, and they talk about the Constitution in common sense ways. For example, I have a chapter. First chapter is called "The Fabulous First." It's all about the rights of the First Amendment. And the Second Amendment chapter title is "The Sacred Second," because without the Second Amendment, we ain't got any of the other 26. Well, we don't have 26 now. We got rid of the Prohibition one, didn't we? So anyway, folks, please bust your paradigm. Start thinking for yourselves. Get a spine. Buy my book, and let me tell you, this will really help you understand things a lot. I write a lot of articles, and hey, somewhere on here or down here in this article, up or down, this way or this way, you'll see links there where you can actually sign up for my newsletter. It's free. It's actually free. Does the government give you anything free? No. Well, the government gives you something free if you snuck into the country. I guess you get free stuff. But for the rest of us, we have to pay for everything. I write all this stuff. I do all this stuff, and I give it away for free. And I'm not making any money for my time. The tens of thousands of hours I've spent on this, I've never received one penny back on it. I've never, if I made a penny per hour for all the hours I've spent on this, I could retire on, maybe retire in Miami Beach or something like that. Actually, I could retire in Cocoa Beach. That would really be good too. Okay, people, where there is no vision, the people perish. Boys and girls, thanks for listening to me. I hope that someday you'll be able to break your paradigms and you'll stop rejecting the people with great ideas and stop rejecting guys like myself who have great ideas. And in closing, let me just say, God bless you and God save our America.